Your stomach is dissolving something right now, quietly, efficiently, without a single complaint. And the liquid doing the dissolving is so corrosive it would blister your skin on contact, eat through a steel nail given enough time, and turn a razor blade into nothing but rust-colored sludge. Yet somehow, your stomach sits there, bathed in this acid every single day of your life, and never once digests itself. How? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to Shocking Anatomy. I'm Dr. James, and today we're going deep inside the one organ in your body that does something almost physically impossible. It destroys everything you throw at it, except itself. Let's start with the acid itself, because most people have no real sense of how brutal it actually is. Your stomach produces hydrochloric acid, the same compound used in industrial metal processing and swimming pool maintenance. The pH of your stomach at full output sits somewhere between 1 and 2. For reference, battery acid is around 0, pure water is 7. Your stomach acid lives right at the edge of the most corrosive end of the scale, aggressive enough to denature proteins on contact, dissolve calcium from bones, and yes, given a few hours, reduce a standard razor blade into a pitted, corroded shadow of itself. A forensic study from the University of Michigan placed a standard stainless steel blade in simulated gastric acid and observed significant structural degradation within 2 hours. This isn't a myth or a YouTube stunt, it's chemistry. Now here's the question your brain should be screaming right now. If the acid is that powerful and your stomach wall is made of living tissue, what is stopping the acid from dissolving you from the inside out? The answer is a substance so humble, so overlooked, that most people never think about it once in their lives: mucus. But not the mucus you're picturing. This isn't the stuff you blow into a tissue. The mucus lining of your stomach is a biological marvel, a gel layer roughly half a millimeter thick, produced continuously by specialized cells called goblet cells embedded in the stomach wall. This layer does something almost miraculous. It maintains a pH of 7, neutral, right at the surface of the stomach wall, even while the stomach cavity, just a fraction of a millimeter away, is roaring at pH 1. That is a pH difference of 1 million times over a distance you couldn't see with the naked eye. Your body engineers an invisible chemical force field, and it rebuilds it constantly because the acid is constantly trying to eat through it. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The stomach's protective system isn't just the mucus, it's a full 3-layer defense. First, the mucus barrier itself. Second, beneath that layer, the epithelial cells of the stomach lining produce bicarbonate, baking soda essentially, and pump it directly into the mucus, neutralizing any acid that manages to seep through. Third, the cells of the stomach lining are tightly packed together with structures called tight junctions, sealing the gaps between them so acid cannot sneak between cells and attack from the side. It's a fortress with a moat, reinforced walls, and guards at every door. But here's what truly makes this system breathtaking. The stomach's lining replaces itself completely every 2 to 3 days. The cells at the surface are essentially sacrificing themselves, taking the chemical beating, while new cells constantly push up from below to replace them. Your stomach is quietly rebuilding itself faster than almost any other tissue in your body, in a continuous, silent cycle of destruction and renewal. By the time you finish watching this video, your stomach will have shed and replaced thousands of surface cells. Now, what happens when this system breaks down? This is where the science gets personal, because roughly 10% of Americans will experience a peptic ulcer at some point in their lives. An ulcer is, at its most basic level, a wound in the stomach lining, a place where the acid finally won. The mucus barrier eroded, the bicarbonate couldn't keep up, and the acid reached living tissue. What follows is intensely painful, a burning, gnawing ache in the upper abdomen that gets worse when the stomach is empty because there's no food to buffer the acid. In severe cases, ulcers can perforate, They eat completely through the stomach wall, allowing stomach contents to spill into the abdominal cavity. This is a medical emergency with a mortality rate that climbs rapidly without surgical intervention. For most of the 20th century, doctors believed ulcers were caused by stress and spicy food, by lifestyle. Then, in one of medicine's most dramatic moments, an Australian physician named Barry Marshall did something extraordinary. In 1984, convinced that ulcers were actually caused by a specific bacterium called Helicobacter pylori, and unable to get ethical approval to test his theory on patients, he drank a solution containing the living bacteria himself. Within days, he developed acute gastritis, the precursor to ulcers. Then he treated himself with antibiotics and recovered completely. He and his colleague Robin Warren won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2005. The cause of most ulcers wasn't stress, it was a bacterium, one that had evolved specifically to survive in stomach acid by surrounding itself in its own ammonia-based neutralizing cloud. We featured a similar story about bacterial survival strategies in our episode on the gut microbiome and butyrate, where we looked at how bacteria in the colon engineer their own chemical environments. H. pylori is estimated to colonize the stomachs of roughly half the world's population. Most people never develop ulcers. The bacterium lives there quietly, kept in check by the immune system. But in some people, under certain conditions, it begins to break down the mucus layer, exposing the stomach wall to the full force of the acid beneath. The rest, as they say, is a gastroenterologist's appointment. What can you actually do to protect your stomach lining? Several things, and they're simpler than you might expect. First, watch your use of NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen and aspirin. These drugs work partly by inhibiting the production of prostaglandins, which are chemical signals your stomach lining uses to trigger mucus production and maintain blood flow to the wall. Taking NSAIDs regularly, especially on an empty stomach, is one of the fastest ways to compromise your stomach's armor. If you need them long-term, your doctor may prescribe a proton pump inhibitor alongside them, a drug that dials back acid production to give the lining a chance to keep up. Second, smoking is directly toxic to the stomach lining. Nicotine reduces blood flow to the gastric mucosa, slowing the replacement of damaged cells and disrupting bicarbonate secretion. Smokers develop ulcers at significantly higher rates than non-smokers, and their ulcers heal more slowly. Third, and this one surprises people, chronic stress does affect ulcer risk, just not through the mechanism doctors used to believe. Stress doesn't directly cause ulcers, but it suppresses the immune system's ability to keep H. pylori in check, and it alters gut motility and acid regulation in ways that can tip a vulnerable person toward ulcer formation. And here's the piece of the puzzle that most people completely miss. Your stomach lining requires specific nutrients to maintain its rapid rate of cell turnover. Zinc, in particular, is critical. It's involved in wound healing and cell membrane integrity throughout the gut. Vitamin A supports mucus production. Amino acids from dietary protein provide the raw materials for new cell construction. When these are chronically deficient, the renewal cycle slows, the mucus layer thins, and the acid starts winning ground it shouldn't have. So the next time you sit down to a meal, consider what's happening a few inches below your shirt. A bath of industrial-grade acid, a miraculous half-millimeter shield holding it back, an army of cells rebuilding the wall in real time, and somewhere in the acid fog, possibly a bacterium that has figured out how to live where almost nothing else can. Your stomach is not just a bag for food, it is one of the most sophisticated chemical reactors in the known universe, and it fits neatly between your ribs. If this blew your mind, hit that like button and subscribe. There is so much more of your body waiting to astonish you.